Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, Zena. And I think calling it a fireside chat is actually appropriate given the amount of body heat in this room. But it is welcome. It is a welcome change as opposed to having to do this virtually. So with that said, I think we'll just get into it. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate you on your fairly new role of just about 6 months in at PepsiCo. And I believe this is your coming out party, officially, speaking for the first time. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. Unlike the previous speaker, I learned my lesson. I always have a PepsiCo beverage in hand, so it's great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think if we can, let's just start with your career path. So you have a very interesting and unique one, having started in CPG and then coming over to the dark side and joining us in big tech for almost 7 years at Google before going back to CPG. Can you just kind of talk about your career path and the steps that you took that led you to each one of those, please?
Yeah, sure. It's been a winding road. When I graduated from college, I was all set to go and work at a tech company, and this was just before the dot-com bubble bursting, for those of you who remember that. And I had this wonderful job. I studied computer science in school. I thought I'm into tech. I'm going to go and be a programmer, and that's what I want to do. And about 3 months before I was supposed to go start work there, they called and said they were going out of business, that the company was imploding. And yeah, I was really bummed because it was this great job here in Chicago, and I was excited to move there from Ohio, which is where I'm from. So I did the only thing one does at that point. I moved back home with my parents and said I've got to find a job and figure out what I want to do. And I kind of fell into marketing because I got a job at GE, and it was working on technical products and services. It was a division of GE IT Solutions that sold servers and workstations and services to like small and mid-sized businesses. And I said, I know and I understand these products, so okay, I guess I could do the marketing for them. What does that really mean, and how do I do this? But I'll try it. And I ended up really enjoying it because GE, similarly to a lot of places that I ended up later in my career, has a very kind of general manager focus for marketing. So you learn about marketing, of course, but you also think about your overall business, and marketing is a lever to drive that. So I was enjoying it a lot and seeing, wow, marketing isn't just making ads, though that's kind of fun. This is cool. I like this. And I knew a lot of people at Procter & Gamble because that's where I grew up, in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so lots of family, friends, and friends of mine from college had gone there. And they said, Zena, if you like marketing, you've got to go to P&G. That's the best place for it. It's right here in your backyard. And I said, okay, but I don't have an MBA. I'm not, from the typical schools that they recruit from. I don't know about this, but right place, right time, and was really fortunate to join there. So I'd say that's when my marketing career really took off. Had some amazing experiences at Procter, worked on the Folgers brand before we divested it, which happened while I was there. And then I moved over to beauty care, which was also a ton of fun. Surprisingly not that different, like food and beauty, there's a lot of emotion in there. It's very personal. It was great experiences on both ends, everything from running the business type roles to upstream innovation, to working closely with the customer, the retailer teams. So was loving life, and in fact there met my husband, another fellow Proctoid, and we got married, and he got this great opportunity to go to Kellogg. And so he said, well, we're only moving to middle of nowhere, Michigan, if there's a really great offer for my wife too. And so we were a package deal, and we both went to Kellogg together. So more great brand management experiences there. I worked on Pop-Tarts, you'll see I have a passion for like food and beverage. Pop-Tarts there, which was really fun, and then our overall master brand. So again, just picking up a lot of great skills and experiences across different CPG brands, which was very, very helpful for me, and I learned a ton. And then, out of the blue, I got a call from Google, and this was in 2013. So at the time, Google was still pretty nascent in marketing their own products. Obviously, they're amazing at working with other companies and being a platform, but hadn't really spent and invested a ton on marketing their own products. And in fact, I would tease people there about it all the time. When I went there, maybe the year before, a couple years before, it was famously said that Larry Page, one of the founders, said, if you have a great product, you don't need marketing. Like, marketing doesn't matter. And when I was interviewing, I said, wait, why would I come to a place where you don't believe in marketing? And they're like, no. Like, he thinks that because that's what it was when he first launched this brand. But now the world's changed. There's a lot of competition for all the things that Google was into at the time, and even more so now. Like, marketing's critical. It's how you tell your story. It's how you get people invested in what you're selling and get them to be not just users, but like advocates. And so going there in marketing was a blast. Like, it was very early days again of the marketing organization there. It was still fairly small. I think now it's probably like 5 or 10x what it was when I started. And there was so much energy there and so much ability to just do pretty much anything that you wanted, which was an amazing place to go and learn. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I worked there on Google Play marketing and then on Chromebooks marketing. So I had a chance to work both on the kind of software platform side and the software/hardware side. And actually the last, 3 years that I was there, I left marketing and went to more of the product side to work in a general management type role. There too, it was kind of funny, and I was having a conversation with the lead of the product one day and was asking some questions about things, and he said, Zena, you're not a typical marketer. Why are you asking me about our portfolio strategy or our margins that we're trying to make on this kind of thing? Like, aren't you just, into the consumer and the question or the ads and the things that you want to do? I said, yeah, I love that stuff, but I also like the business side. So he said, why don't you come over and run the US team for us? So it was sales, operations, kind of a broad swath of everything but the software development itself. So had some awesome experiences there and doing that, and then just before I left I started up a growth team because Chrome was in hyper growth mode and we wanted to go into many more countries, and so kind of getting all of that settled and started. But ultimately, one of the things I realized, and just before I left, I went on maternity leave after I had my son, and so I got a great chance to spend several months, because Google has an awesome policy, and I was at home with my son for almost 6 months, and I thought, let me think through, what do I really want to do next? And I realized I love marketing so much, and I miss it in this really heavy operational role. And I could go back to marketing at Google, which is great and had definitely grown and expanded, but and then I'm going to miss this kind of general management and business side. Like, what do I do? And then it was, well, wait a minute, the place where I learned, or the industry that I learned, was CPG. That's how they think of marketing. It's a much more broad view that's driving the business, and this is something maybe I should look into going back to. So I went back to CPG 2.5 years ago now, and worked at Kimberly-Clark. So I was there for a couple of years, again, great experience, and that's what brought me and my family here to Chicago, although rather ironically, the office never opened in the entire time that I was there because of COVID. It was, yes, quite a surreal experience, but loved the experience there in that it was coming back to CPG. The role that I had was heading up global marketing and digital transformation. So a lot of the experiences that I had in tech and at Google specifically were so helpful to really setting this strategy and vision of where we wanted to go as an industry in CPG, and working through what are the things that we as a company are going to do to pursue that. So yeah, I was there for a couple of years, and while again, great experience and great people, I missed being on a business. My entire career I'd always worked on businesses, whether marketing or more heavily on the GM side, and had this amazing opportunity to join PepsiCo. So I'm a little under 6 months in, still trying to figure out which way is up. It's such a fantastic company. I sense a lot of the same energy that we had at Google, but a lot of the business side of things and the broad operational sense that I love from CPG. So it's been a great ride so far, although I feel like I barely scratched the surface of getting to know it.
That's awesome, thank you. And what would you say in terms of going back from Google back to CPG? What was one thing that you took from big tech that really stands out that you think is applicable as you progress in your career in CPG that you think you'll take forward?
I think it's having the energy and the mindset of experimentation and of growth. CPG, especially my first tour, was much more focused on efficiency. So it's like, what are you going to do to cut your costs and drive the same amount of volume? But it's all about cutting costs. And that's still important, but now I've seen, and I think everyone in the industry has realized, like, look, if you're managing completely for a bottom line and cutting costs, you're not going to grow in the long term. You really need to think about investing in building consumer relationships. You need to test, experiment, try things, and the great thing is that I think technology enables you to do that in a much lower risk way than you would before. So yeah, I think it's just that energy of wanting to try different things and then actually going through with it and making it happen.
That's great. And so yeah, you're 6 months in, so you're kind of drinking from the fire hose, I'm sure. But so far, what do you see as the opportunities to seize right away, and what do you see as some of the immediate challenges that you face?
Yeah, well, I don't need to tell you all, it's challenging times for a lot of people out there with everything that's going on in the world on many different levels. We're trying to think about, again, what's the role that we and our brands play in the lives of our consumers? How can we make sure to deliver it to them in the best possible way? So there's a number of things. I mean, we are focused on how do we manage through if we get into a recession, how can we ensure that we're delivering our products. We had a lot of craziness to manage through with COVID and supply chain issues and all of that, so delivering products. And then personally, I'm really excited about doing much more with data and developing consumer relationships. I was just recently talking to someone about it, and at Kimberly-Clark and even at Google when I was working on Chromebooks and Google Play, we had a lot more reason to develop deeper relationships with our consumers because there are critical inflection points at which you engage with your consumers. So, at Kimberly-Clark, thinking about Huggies, it's getting in that point of market entry for a new mom. That's absolutely critical that she knows and understands our products at that point. Beverages, a whole different world, because so many of the occasions are about just where are you, and if you're thirsty and you're on the street and let me just walk into a C-store or a restaurant or any place to get a beverage, and so it's not as much of a planned purchase in all cases. So it's interesting because in the situations like at Kimberly-Clark and even at Google, where there's a very distinctive consumer entry point, that lends itself to a lot more data usage, right? Like, how do we find the person at that point? How do we deliver the most relevant message to them? And here, there are so many more occasions than just that critical first entry point. And so working through, how do we talk to consumers in the best way? What's the right way to personalize given all of the different situations and places that they consume our beverages? So yeah, it's really exciting to think about because it's pretty different than some of the other environments that I've worked in.
And to that point, data-driven transformation is no longer reserved just for digital natives, right? And so how are you working to implement that in your current role at PepsiCo?
Yeah, I mean, PepsiCo, it's great to have come into a place that's gotten and had such a great foundation in like data-driven marketing. So they've invested a ton in building a great tech stack. It's a really well-oiled machine. What's funny is I don't know that all of the brands in our business are using it as much as they can, and that's part of why I'm excited to come in, because it's like less of the building what needs to be done. It's more of the how do we get people to use it, get people excited about it, because a lot of our marketers have grown up in the more traditional way and haven't necessarily engaged as much in it. So yeah, I think it's more about how we actually get people to want to do more, show them exactly what great data-driven marketing can be, and then actually do it.
Yeah, and the common theme that we're seeing within Google is, across CPG, the desire to get closer to the consumer, deliver personalized experiences. How are you doing that? How are you taking that and trying to implement that today? And what do you see as that evolving over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, back to my previous experience, I'd say at Kimberly-Clark, because we knew so much about that particular moment of point of market entry and exactly what mom wanted to hear at that moment, it was great. We not only had personalized ads, but we got to a point where we could give mom a personalized website experience. Once you go to, you're searching for something and you land on the Huggies site and you have a newborn, seeing stuff about potty training isn't going to help you. But if you see stuff about newborns and this is exactly what they need, that's going to engage you much, much deeper. So, thinking through personalization not just as, okay, this is a consumer to deliver an ad to, but what's content we can develop, what are the website experiences, the owned experiences we can put together, what are like a loyalty program initiatives we want to do. So there was a lot of that. Here at PepsiCo, I think we're still trying to figure out some of those things. Like, one of the brands that I work on, Mountain Dew, has got this amazing, we call it the Dew Nation. It's just this consumer group that are absolutely in love and obsessed with Mountain Dew. I don't think I've ever worked on a brand where there's like hundreds or thousands of people with the brand tattoo and they proudly show it off everywhere. Like that's our Dew Nation. And so thinking about what are some things we can do to customize experiences for them, get them even involved in how we market. They're not just our consumers, but maybe part of our team in some way. So we're working on some of those types of things. And again, the awesome thing about technology is I think it enables that at a broader scale. So you can do that if you've got a group of 20 people that you want to work with, but if you've got thousands, how do you do that efficiently? And that's what we're working on through the technology.
Very cool. And you've touched on it a bit already, but given the fact that you do own cross-brand and you have some brands that are more mature in that, in their journey there, how are you planning to or thinking about addressing that with some of the other brands that might be a little bit further behind?
Yeah, it goes back to that education, having all of our marketers understand what the opportunities are, and then actually getting out there and doing it and testing, experimenting. So, I'm fortunate, I feel like at PepsiCo it's got a pretty good experimentation culture. Like people are open to trying different things, and there isn't institutional blockage of that I know there can be in some places. But here there's openness to it. It's just prioritizing things in the midst of everything else you're doing, and it's a super dynamic culture. So everyone wants to do a lot of different things. How do we prioritize what we want to do? So in the process of doing that with my team as we speak.
Cool. And as you start to embrace some of these new technologies, obviously having a partner is going to be critical, and that's something that we see in the technology side within Google. What role do you see partners playing, and how critical are they as you start to undertake this?
Yeah, absolutely critical. I especially I'd say in my previous role at KC, as we were setting up global capabilities, doing it with the right partners, getting the right type of building together mentality is really critical, because as a company you can say this is what I want my goal to be, but I don't think any CPG company has all of the breadth and depth of knowledge in the digital transformation space to do it on their own. We absolutely need partners, whether that's agencies, whether that's platforms. There's a need to grow our knowledge faster and to bring partners along with us to do that. So super important to have great relationships and build those so that we can build things together. Yeah, the number of the key initiatives that I've driven in the past, again, whether Google, KC, even back in my Kellogg and P&G days, are because there's a great relationship and partnership there. It takes a lot of work to develop, and sometimes, especially in times of wanting to move fast, it's not the easiest to do, but it's worth the investment.
And how have your relationship with the agencies evolved over time? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general things are evolving as far as styles of working. You know, I remember when starting my career, and especially at places like Procter, it was a very formalized process, and we'd have a super strict timeline. And then when there was a presentation, it would be, 4 or 5 levels from the Procter side, sitting across the table from 4 or 5 levels at the agency side, and there was just a very prescribed way of how you did everything. What I've seen more and more now, we did this at Google a lot, and I've seen it in other places too, is it's less about that formality, it's more about, okay, let's just talk about like good ideas together, and let's have working sessions, let's go through things together when they're not completely baked, and that's okay, and we can figure it out together. It goes back to, again, that building together, because when you have that super formal process, folks get invested in, well, this is what I built, and then I have to show it to you, and it's done, and you have to tell me, do you like it or not? But when you're both kind of in the kitchen together, and you're making stuff together, you can influence as it's being created, and both people feel invested in it. So whether that's creative work, whether it's capability building, I love that things have evolved to a much more collaborative space, and I know that's not everywhere, but at least where I am, I love to encourage that, because I think you end up with stronger work.
Absolutely. And in organizations such as the size of PepsiCo, right, there are a lot of agencies, a lot of partners. What are some of the challenges you find in managing those multiple touch points and those multiple partners and agencies?
Yeah, there are. I don't think that's a bad thing, because bringing the right folks to the table with a lot of expertise in different areas is always a good thing. But to your point, it's challenging at times to manage. So I think doing it with, again, a lot of open collaboration, a lot of open communication is key to that. I wouldn't say there's any magic secret to it. It's harder, to be that open and to spend more time collaborating. But I think ultimately you end up with much better work.
Cool. Another thing I wanted to touch on was sustainability. That's, consumers are becoming more and more interested in understanding where products are coming from, and the fact that they're being sourced and built and made sustainably. PepsiCo has leaned in pretty heavily with this, with the creation of the Pep Positive program. How are you implementing that in your strategy and your day-to-day going forward?
Yeah, it's really important, and it's a part of why I wanted to join the company. Doing my research beforehand into what Pepsi's been doing, it's great. Now it's just a start. There's much more to come and much more to do, but to see the commitments that the company has made is really powerful, and I love that it's across a number of different areas. So you think traditionally about sustainability as, okay, it's environmental and how do we do things in that space, which is a critical piece. But also PepsiCo thinks about it as how do we sustain communities and ensure that people are making great choices for themselves and their families. So there's a number of angles to it that I love how we're approaching it. I don't have an answer on exactly how we're implementing it across my brands yet. There's a number of initiatives that we've been doing, but I think there's more to do, and we're spending some time really interrogating how do we get to very purpose-driven activations for the brands, and doing it in an authentic way. There's been a lot of controversy over the past year or so about purpose, and does it really matter? Does everyone need it? And I think the answer is yes, we do, but I don't think it's the traditional sort of purpose of maybe saving the world for every single brand. It might be something about, giving folks a smile, being a moment of entertainment, being a moment of escape. Like, it's okay to have a purpose that is more authentic to what your product experience is. So we're working through how exactly does that manifest for all the brands that I'm working on, and that's a fun journey that we're underway.
Cool. And what's something that you're super passionate about that you want to bring to PepsiCo that you feel either isn't there or you just want to expand upon further?
Gosh, a few things. Something that I'm personally really passionate about is just DEI initiatives overall, whether that's broadly in the industry, working with different agencies and marketing partners and encouraging, diversity in how we approach things, whether it's our internal organization and ensuring we've got a lot of representation there. I'm excited about doing much more with that, and again, that's one of the reasons I joined PepsiCo. It's a great company and has leaned in to do a number of things. When I was at Kimberly-Clark, we actually took a look at some of the work Pepsi had done as an example of, wow, look, here's someone who's leaning in and doing some great things. So a lot of great work that's happened and a lot more that needs to. Back to the point on experimentation, I'm also all for, we've got to try some new things, whether that's some of the data-driven marketing or things that are a bit further out. And again, this is where Pepsi's done a great job already. You've probably seen some of the things we've done with NFTs and Web3, and all of that space is still so nascent, and who knows where it's going to end up, if that's going to be where all of our businesses are in a few years or if it's not. But for me, the emergence of these types of new technologies are so great to go and see how do we engage with consumers in this new way. Whether or not it actually works or lasts, it's almost irrelevant because things are going to change no matter what. Whether it's going to be in this space or another one, it's building the muscle of trying new stuff and being willing to kind of roll with the punches on how it turns out and what you learn from that you apply to the next thing.
Yeah, and one final question, just in terms of trends that are taking place within marketing, do you see any that you think are flying under the radar or poised to take off versus those that you think are just kind of noise in the marketplace?
I don't know that there's anything new that I would say is under the radar that you all probably haven't already heard about. Just again thinking about things like Web3, NFTs. It's a really, really interesting new space that I want to do more in to learn, but I think we've all got a long way to figure out exactly what that's going to be. The metaverse overall, we've done some interesting executions and gotten some great connections with consumers there, but it's a very small group and it doesn't have scale yet. So how does that scale? That's what I'm really interested in playing around more with.
Cool, I guess anyone else? Open it up for questions.
Hi. You've been in a lot of different corporate environments, and I'm just wondering, as you continue to work on the culture at Pepsi, and we're coming out of this pandemic where ways of working are just totally different, and the Great Resignation has a lot of people kind of rethinking and culture being a huge hyper-focus for a lot of companies to retain talent. What's something that maybe you brought from one of your other experiences that you hope to instill at Pepsi, or any culture areas of opportunity?
Yeah, culture is so critical, and it's interesting as I'm coming in because folks at PepsiCo just over the past 3 months or so have been back in the office, which has been a really, really new experience for people after 2 years of working from home. And me not being there yet, because my team is all based in New York, has also been tough. What's helped so far has been setting some norms and standards for the team, like, okay, we're going to be in on these couple days of the week, we're going to leave those days for doing, brainstorming stuff, team connects or even one-on-ones where you want to do some things face-to-face. And then, your typical status meetings and things like that, we can do those virtually. So I think setting some of those things is really important. More broadly for culture too, I mean, one of the things that I'm sure all of your organizations are dealing with is burnout. Like it's been rough through the pandemic and people working from home. It's great on some sides and then tough on others, and people have been working a lot more, we've found. So, for burnout, it's like, what are the things we can do to make sure people are getting the right recognition for the work that they're doing, which is harder when you're in a virtual environment, but making the effort to do that. How do you prioritize things in order to focus on the most important work versus everything that comes up, which inevitably is a lot. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, I'd say, and I still am looking forward to it, but I haven't gotten a great sense of exactly what's going to work in this new world. So I hope getting out there soon will help grow that even more. I mean, I don't know, anything you've seen from culture and things that you've been doing that have worked?
I think one of the things that, MSJ, so I'm from Molson Coors. Hello. One of the things that we started during the pandemic was these town halls that she would host weekly, and I think it's something that we've taken back now that we're all in the office certain times of the week. We are still doing those town halls, and I think it was just a key learning of, wow, that was a great way to bring us all together on a more normal cadence, and I think it's something great from the pandemic.
That's a great one. Any other questions?
Hi, I don't know if you were here earlier, there's a fabulous group of women talking about their journey as they rose inside organizations. And, the statistic was brought to the table, there just still isn't equality in the C-suite, right? Not quite the amount of representation we might all like to see. A stat that lives rent-free in my brain is that when men versus women, when they're going for that next level up position, men, they'll go for it when they're 30% confident in their ability to deliver. Women won't go for it until they're 100% confident. You've risen through the ranks, would love to hear what advice you give to women who are looking to take that next step up.
You touched on it there. It's the confidence and having it and leaning into it, I'll say. A number of the roles that I took over my career, and I'd say probably most at Google, because that was an environment of just hyper growth, and there was a lot of opportunity to lean into things. And in traditional CPG, it's harder. There's usually a prescribed path because that's just how the business is, and there isn't the growth rates that we had in tech. But there, I was able to accelerate because I leaned into some of the opportunities that came my way. I mentioned like my head of product at Google when I was working on Chromebooks said, "Oh, Zena, you're not a typical marketer. Why don't you come over and run this team?" And I had never run a sales team before. I didn't know all that much about operations. But because he saw something in me and wanted to lean into that, I said, well, okay, I'm gonna try it. Like, worst thing that happens, I fail, and I'll learn a lot, so let me lean in and do it. And I did. So I think it is back to that confidence level and having it and leaning into trying something new, even if you don't feel like you know it 100%. Guarantee you nobody stepping into a new job knows it 100%. And I think a lot of women feel that they have to have more of that expertise, and you'll learn it as you go.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Zena. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.